start. Very okay. Now, what is the thing you see here?
Sir, it is a portable oxygen concentrator.
Yes, it is a portable oxygen concentrator. Very good. Can you tell me what are the different sources of oxygen supply in a hospital?
Sir, it's a pipeline gas supply from the
Okay. Number one commonly used is the pipeline gas supply from the manifold. Very good. Then
cylinders, portable
good.
cylinders, E-type.
Portable cylinders, cylinder supply. Very good. Then there are basically four different sources. Okay, one is a pipeline from the manifold. Second thing is the cylinders. Third thing is the liquid oxygen tank.
Okay.
And the last thing is the oxygen concentrators. So these are the four different sources of oxygen supply to anesthesia mission. Okay, so you must be well aware of this pipeline and the cylinders. We'll discuss in two sessions about liquid oxygen and oxygen concentrators, which has gained a quite lot of importance in recent years because of this COVID. Okay, so you might get either oxygen concentrator or liquid oxygen tank this time, possibly. Okay, right. So how does the liquid oxygen tank function basically?
Sir, it its principle is pressure swing absorption.
Pressure swing absorption. Okay, very good. What is a pressure swing absorption?
Sir, it have sieve beds made up of zeolite or aluminum silicate, which absorbs nitrogen from the air and.
Okay, so it basically contains zeolite molecular sieve, right? So it's like a sieve which is containing zeolite. And what is a zeolite made up of?
Aluminum silicate.
Okay, it is a hydrated aluminum silicate. Okay, it's an hydrated aluminum silicate of Earth's alkaline materials. So this is the thing where the zeolite is made up of. Okay, so this one, specifically absorbs nitrogen, other gases. Okay, it doesn't absorb oxygen. Okay, oxygen is not absorbed. It basically absorbs other things, and oxygen is getting filtered out. Okay.
Yes.
So first thing, when the atmospheric air is coming inside, it is getting filtered first, and then it passes through different molecular sieves and it is pressurized in such a way that both the nitrogen and other inert gas substances are absorbed and oxygen is free to move. Once oxygen is filtered, it is compressed to 13,700 kilopascal. Okay, like the pressure you exist in the cylinder. So it is filtered again with the zeolite molecular sieve, then it is pressurized, washed, and then it is used. Okay, good. So what is the maximum oxygen concentration you can achieve in the oxygen concentrator?
About 90 to 95%.
It is going to be 95% is the maximum oxygen concentration you can achieve with the oxygen concentrator. What is the remaining 5%?
Nitrogen air.
No.
Right. Air.
No. So remaining 5% is due to impurities caused by the argon. So argon is the only inert material which is not filtered by this zeolite molecular sieve. So argon is acting as an impurity. So that is causing the oxygen concentration to drop to 95%. Remaining 5% is contributed by argon. Argon is a major source of impurity in oxygen concentrator. Okay. So what is the life of oxygen concentrator? Maximum life it can come. It can work up to 10,000 hours. Okay. So once the 10,000 hours has been utilized, you have to change the filter. So that's the maximum lifespan of using an oxygen concentrator. It can be connected to anesthesia machine. It can be used for a home portable oxygen. So both the ways it is available, it can be used. Okay. So this is a major thing they might ask you in the OSCE station. So major source of impurities, argon, maximum oxygen concentration you can achieve is going to be 95%. Okay. Okay, guys, any questions in this station? We can move on to the next one.
Sir, regarding flow rates, sir, what range of flow rates?
Okay, so the flow rates are now, in order to prevent this argon impurity, you have to keep a high flow rates when you're attaching to the anesthesia machine. At least 15 liters has to be used when you're using for anesthesia machine. For home oxygen therapy, 2 to 4 liters is sufficient.
So it is humidified oxygen.
It is not a humidified one. Okay, we have to artificially humidify.
Sir, please repeat the principle, please.
Principle, it is just a filter. Okay, you got a zeolite molecular sieve. The zeolite is consisting of hydrated aluminum silicates. Okay, so that filters nitrogen and other impurities. Two things it can't filter: one is oxygen, one is argon. So maximum FiO2 you can achieve is going to be 95%, and remaining 5% is because of this argon impurity.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Good. Let's move on to next one. Okay, who is going to start with me? A new face. Come fast. We'll finish it very soon, being Sunday.
Mega, sir.
Yes.
This
What
is
is the?
anesthesia workstation.
Okay, I didn't start my question. Don't worry. So, what is this circuit called as?
This is the closed circuit.
Okay, so closed circuits or the circle system. Okay,
Yes.
right. And a question to you is here. What are the components of the circle system?
Components of circle system is breathing tube,
Okay,
reservoir bag,
okay. It has
APL
got an
valve,
inspiratory tube. Okay,
inspiratory tube,
tube,
expiratory tube, filters.
expiratory tube, filters. What filters?
Uh, HME filters is attached
That is
to
not a
inspiratory valve.
component of circle system. That is not a
Okay, sir.
component. Okay,
APL valve,
APL valve. Good.
then bellows.
Bellows are not part of the circle system.
Sorry.
Unidirectional valve.
Unidirectional valve. Very good.
CO2 absorber.
Unidirectional
Soda
valve
lime.
and soda lime absorber, CO2 absorber. So these are the components of circle system. Okay, so these are 5 components: inspiratory tube, expiratory tube, and its corresponding unidirectional valves. Then you got an APL valve, and then you got a soda lime canister. Okay, so there is a inspiratory limb. Okay, it has got an unidirectional valve. Then it goes to the patient, right? YP is connected. Then the expiratory limb comes. Okay, expiratory limb comes, and then there is followed by an APL valve. Then it goes to the soda lime canister. Then comes and joins the fresh close with the inspiratory limb. Okay, it has got a unidirectional valve here. So this is the components of a circle system. What are the advantages of using circle system over Mapleson circuit? Mega.
Yes, sir. The chances of OT pollution is less.
Okay, less OT pollution. Good.
Economic humidification is there. Less chances
Is
of
very one by one, economical. Okay, humidification and warming. Very good. Okay, it can humidify the gas and it can warm the gas. Good. Humidification,
chances of
warm.
rebreathing is less
Okay, so
because
gas
of the
conservation.
CO2 absorption.
Gas
yes.
conservation, you can reutilize the gas. Right, so less OT pollution, very economical. You can humidify, you can use low flows. Low flows are possible only with circle system. So you can conserve the gas, you can reutilize the gases. So these are the main advantages.
One
Yeah.
of the less advantage is the hands of anesthesia. People are free, means no assistance is required.
Okay, right. So what are the disadvantages of drawbacks of using circle system?
Disadvantages are the it may cause exhaustion of solar lime, may cause increase in EtCO2.
Okay, soda lime can get exhausted. Soda lime
It may
exhaustion.
multiple connections, so chances of disconnection.
Okay, disconnection in the circuits. Fine.
Heavy weight, so
Bulky,
maybe
okay, bulky circuit,
yes.
very important. It is bulky, it is not a portable one, so you can't utilize and except in the operation theaters. Then
That's all.
Hypoxic gas mixture delivery in case of low flow.
hypoxic gas mixture delivery in cases many people are telling this. Is this written anywhere in any textbooks? It is not so. Okay, so hypoxic delivery of gas system, when you have an oxygen analyzer in the machine, you can detect there is going to be hypoxic emission. So it is not basically because of the circle system. Okay, so circle system doesn't contribute in producing hypoxic mixture delivery, provided you have an oxygen analyzer in the system. I don't know, it is anywhere written like that. Circle system hasn't got any role in delivering hypoxic gas mixture. If that is the case, the circle system would have been gone out of its use. Okay, circle system hasn't got any role in delivering hypoxic mixture. Okay, the most important disadvantage, okay, it is bulky, it can get disconnected, sodium extraction. Then main thing is interaction of volatile anesthetics with the soda lime. So with sevoflurane, what is the major complication you develop?
Compound A.
Compound A. Okay, compound A can be produced because of interaction of the sevoflurane with soda lime. And then with desflurane, what can you develop?
I don't know.
Carbon monoxide.
Carbon
poison.
monoxide.
Carbon monoxide poison. Okay, carbon monoxide can get generated with desflurane. So this interaction of volatile anesthetics with soda lime can be one other complications of using a circle system. Okay, so when do this compound A and this carbon monoxide develops normally? Poison develops.
Desiccated.
Okay, so when the soda lime is dry, okay, dry, when the soda lime is desiccated, sorry, so dry, desiccated, when there is a high temperature,
Low flow.
high temperature in the soda lime, and when you use prolonged duration of low flows. So these are the 4 situations where you can get chances of developing compound A with sevoflurane or carbon monoxide with desflurane can happen. So when the soda lime is dry, when the soda lime is desiccated, and you use a temperature in the soda lime is very high, and when you use a prolonged duration of low flows of anesthesia. Okay, good. What is the diameter of this scavenging system? Dr. Megha?
Don't know.
30. I said
30
yesterday.
millimeter. 30 millimeter.
30. I said yesterday, right? 30. Okay. In anesthesia, the number 30 is the only place where you get an anesthesia is going to be scavenging
Yes.
tube. So it is made as 30 mm because it is a passive scavenging system. So it can flow. So when you keep a diameter wide, it can flow without any resistance. So that's why it's a huge tube. Good. What is the absorption capacity of the soda lime?
240 to 260.
1 kilogram
think.
of soda lime can absorb 120 liters of carbon dioxide. Okay, this is normal absorption capacity of the soda lime. Okay, so what is the normal contents in the soda lime?
Calcium
Sodium
carbonate.
hydroxide.
Soda lime. Okay, 94% it is going to be calcium hydroxide. Okay, remaining 5% or 4% is going to be either sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide. Okay, and some few 0.5% is going to be the other mixtures. Apart from these things, what are all the present in the soda lime?
Trisodium silicate.
Silicates, okay, trisodium silicate. What is the purpose of silicate?
Hardening, sir.
Okay, it is a hardening substance. Okay, so these soda lime granules, they can get break down and become powders. So when they become powders, what happens? It increases the resistance to the flow of gases into the soda lime. So in order to prevent the powdery form, we harden the soda lime by adding silicone. Okay, then what other things are present? Water.
Indicators.
Water, 13 to 19%, it has got moisture content in it. Okay, 13 to 19%. Okay, then what are the things?
Indicators.
Indicators. Okay, so there are different indicators which change color depending upon the pH. Okay, what is the normal pH of the soda lime? Normal
Don't know.
pH is 13. Okay, it is 13. The soda lime changes color when the pH drops less than 10. Okay, so when the pH is changing to less than 10, it changes its color. Okay, so normal pH of soda lime is kept around 30. It is a highly alkaline. Okay, apart from this, there are zeolite which is present. Okay, so the purpose of zeolite is to increase the lifespan or the longevity of the soda lime. It keeps the moisture content for quite longer duration so that it increases the lifespan of the soda lime crystal. So apart from calcium hydroxide, sodium hydroxide, you have got silicates to harden, you have got water to moisture, you've got indicators, and you've got zeolites to increase the lifespan of the soda lime crystals. Okay, good. So absorption capacity is 1 kilogram of soda lime can absorb 120 liters of carbon dioxide. Okay, there are some chemical reactions which happen which I don't want to touch. I hope they don't ask that in the exam. Apart from calcium hydroxide, soda lime, what are the other what are the other contents which are present in these carbon dioxide absorber apart from soda lime?
Paralyme.
There is berry lime. Okay. Then there is Amsorb.
Pyrolite.
What is Amsorb? It is calcium chloride plus calcium hydroxide. So the advantages of Amsorb is it doesn't produce any compound or carbon monoxide poisoning with sevoflurane and desflurane. That's the main advantage of using Amsorb, but it is very expensive. Good. Any questions in this station?
Sir, another disadvantage of circle system is that is it bulky compared to like work of breathing basically? Sir?
Yeah, but basically it is high resistance circuit. Very good. Okay, it's a high resistance circuit, so you can't use it for spontaneous ventilation. Okay, it's a high resistance circuit because you got a longer length, you got unidirectional valves. It's a bulky circuit, so that naturally increases the resistance. So for spontaneously breathing patient, you can't utilize it for regular circuit. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Good. Let's move on to next station. Okay, good. Who wants to join this with me?
Sir, I would like to join, sir.
Okay, good. What is the common vessel performed for invasive artery line monitoring?
Sir,
Radial
artery, sir.
Okay, see, she has volunteered. Rest all, please be quiet. So it is going to be radial artery. What are the other locations where you can use invasive artery monitoring?
Arteria dorsalis pedis,
Okay,
brachial artery,
right.
femoral artery.
Okay, fine. So femoral artery, it is not utilized basically because of its technical purpose. Okay, because it is in the inguinal region, it can get kinked. Okay, so you can use dorsalis pedis, you can use posterior tibial, you can use ulnar, and you can use brachial artery. Okay, these are the common sites of invasive monitoring. So what are the indications for using invasive monitors?
So major
Mention
vascular
few indications.
surgeries.
Okay, mention any few indications, right?
Major vascular surgeries, sir.
Okay, major vascular surgeries then.
Emergencies, sir. Trauma, polytrauma.
Okay, so
Where,
when you expect a massive fluid
shock.
shifts, okay,
Yes, sir.
any surgeries which can cause massive fluid shifts like open laparotomies, vascular surgeries, surgeries which has got a potential to bleed high, okay,
Yes.
those type of surgeries we can use invasive monitoring. Then any cardiopulmonary compromise, patient has got LV failure, patient got a high pulmonary hypertension, or any end stage renal disease or end stage liver disease, invasive monitoring is indicated. Okay, similarly complex pregnancies, okay, like preeclampsia, placenta previa, where you expect a massive bleed, that is again usage of invasive monitoring is indicated. Then complex neurosurgeries. Okay, good. What is modified Allen's test?
It is a test to check the collaterals for the artery which has to be cannulated for invasive.
Okay, how it is done?
Usually there are modified Allen's. So we ask the patient to fist the hand and
Okay.
we hold.
What is the
both
first
the
thing you
elbow-
do? What is the first thing you do in modified Allen's test?
We take a pulse oximeter reading.
No. Ask the patient to
Lift up the hand.
raise the hand. Okay, ask the patient to raise the hand. That's the first
Yes.
thing you have to do.
Yes. Sir.
Raise the hand for 30 seconds. Okay, raise the hand for 30 seconds. Then what you do?
Then we ask the patient to fist the hand, sir, and we
Okay.
palpate both the radial and the ulnar arteries.
Okay,
sir.
then ask the patient to make a tight fist. Okay, then what you do?
Then we occlude both the palpate and occlude the
So
radial.
occlude both radial and the ulnar arteries. Okay, then what do you do?
Then we release the ulnar and keep the radial artery occluded.
Okay, so you release one vessel, either it could be radial or ulnar. If you're planning to cannulate the radial artery, you can release ulnar artery, and then what you check?
We check for, then ask the patient to open the hand.
Okay.
Yes. and check for
When you open the hand with the two vessels occluded, what do you find?
the recirculation, that is the color
No.
change.
What happens, you both arteries are occluded.
Branching.
You are asking to open the
Branching.
hand. What do you notice?
The color discoloration, blanching.
Okay, so it will be pallor, right? Pallor or the blanching. It will be whitening out. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now the entire hand is whitening out. Then what do you do next?
We open one of the vessel.
Okay. Preferably, if you're planning for radial artery, you're going to release the ulnar
Ulnar.
occlusion. Okay. What do you notice when you release ulnar occlusion?
The time of return of the color, sir.
Okay. So pallor to it has to become rubor. What is the time duration accepted?
5 seconds, sir.
5 to 15 seconds.
15
Okay.
seconds.
If it is returned within 5 to 15 seconds, it is accepted as an adequate collateral circulation and you can use that vessel for cannulation. Okay.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Excellent. So there is a primitive Allen's test. This is a modified Allen's test. In the primitive Allen's test, what they did is they asked the patient, both the hands are asked to make the fist, okay, and they occlude only the radial artery, okay. Both the patients, both the hands have made a fist, and both the hands they occlude the radial artery, just the radial artery alone, okay. When the patient releases the fist, they have to note change in the color from pallor to rubor. That is what the primitive Allen's test is. They don't occlude both the vessels, they just occlude only the radial artery. Okay, what is the principal circuit used in the invasive waterline monitoring?
Western bridge, sir.
Okay, it is the Wheatstone bridge circuit. I don't want to go very deep in that, so they don't ask you much. What are the complications of invasive artery monitoring?
Immediate is bleeding,
Okay,
hematoma, spasm of the vessels, sir.
okay, vessel spasm.
Later, it can be infections and
Do,
thrombophlebitis.
do arterial lines get infected?
No,
Have you
sir.
seen anywhere, have you read any article where the arterial line set is getting infected?
No, sir.
Why?
Sir, femoral artery side.
Arterial site never gets infected at all. Why?
High blood pressure.
Yes, okay. The flow of the vessel speed is so high that there is no point of stasis. So all the organisms which you try to multiply in the side are completely washed away. So nowhere artery line chances of getting infected is extremely very, very low. Artery line never get infected at all because of the rapidity of the flow. Okay.
Yes, sir.
It is only the CVC catheters or the venous line catheters which get infected. Okay. So hematoma, bleeding, then distal gangrene, digital gangrene, then surrounding nerves. Okay. Around the radial artery, you got superficial radial nerve. So that can get infected, patient injured, and patient can have tingling sensation. Okay. So these are some of the possible complications of using an artery line. Then accidentally, the nurse may utilize that for fluid
IV
giving. Okay,
fluids.
without. So that's another possible complication. So make sure when you put an artery line, just label it. It is only for invasive monitoring, not for fluids. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yes.
Sir, in Allen's test, we grade Allen's test, no, sir, mild, moderate, severe, like 5 to 15 seconds is considered normal, like it's less than that, more
I
than
mean,
that, the grading.
the thing is, no, the mild, moderate, severe. I don't know why they've graded it, but basically, within 5 to 15 seconds, if you don't get rubor appearance, then abandon using that artery line. That's it. As simple as it is.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay. Then any other question? Do you know any idea about what are any specific characteristics of the arterial cannula we should use? Any physical characters which is more important in choosing the arterial cannula? If you don't, there are no problem. They don't ask you in the exam. Don't worry. Leave it. Okay. We'll go to the next session.
Sir, a word on dampening and over dampening, sir.
Okay. So dampening and over dampening. So what happens, this is a normal artery line trace. Okay. When there is an over dampening, okay, so you got an artery here, you put an artery line cannula, and then you got a catheter which is communicating from the artery line cannula. Then you got a transducer. that is connected to the monitor and it displays the artery lane pulsation. Okay. So what happens when there is a clot here? So the artery pulsation, which is coming and hitting the cannula, and the pulsation is transmitted along the fluid column. So when there is a clot, it will take up all the energy from the pulsation. So what happens beyond the clot, you get very slow amount of waveform which is reaching the transducer. So in that case, if you see the wave, it will be like this. So this is an example of over dampening. So in over dampening, the problem is it underestimates the systolic blood pressure. It overestimates the diastolic blood pressure. This is over dampening. Now, what is under dampening? So you got a cannula here. Then you got a tubing which is connected to the monitor, right? Say for example, if you're using a very highly compliant tube, okay, like an IV line tube or the IV catheter, instead of artery line tubing, if you're using IV catheter, what happens, whenever the pulse is coming and hitting through the fluid column, it is getting transmitted. This tube also dances because it is highly compliant. So along with arterial pulsation, the tube will be dancing. So when the connecting tube is dancing along with the arterial pulsation, what happens, the energy is exaggerated. So this is an example of underdampening. So in underdampening, the pulsation will be like this because of both the arterial pulsation as well as the dancing of the tube tends to over exaggerate the pulse waveform. So in the monitor, you will have a high systolic blood pressure and very low diastolic blood pressure. Whereas the mean arterial pressure will be constant in either situations. So this is over dampening and this is under dampening. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Everyone, is it clear?
Sir, please explain the square wave test. When we flush and we get the square wave, and
right. So
that's
how
how
to check
Yes.
to check whether the circuit is optimally dampened? Okay. So what happens? You got I think I haven't got the transducer picture. Don't worry. So you got a transducer here. Okay. Then you got a three-way, right? You got a three-way in that. Okay, fine. At the end, I'll get a picture and then I'll explain so that it'll be easy for you at the end of this class.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
No worries. I'll explain at the end of this class. Just remind me. Okay. Let's move on to the next station. Okay. So who wants to start the station?
Yes, sir. Hello.
Yes. Ajay.
Anchal, sir.
Anchal. Yes. What is this, Anchal?
Sir, it's a thrive.
It's a
Air
high flow
thrive,
nasal oxygen. Okay.
flow nasal
Transnasal,
Yes, sir.
transnasal, humidified, high flow nasal
Humidifier,
oxygen.
rapid.
Okay, that is also very important because in COVID situations, you're using a high flows now. Okay, high flow nasal cannulas.
Yes.
So there is a possible chance that you might get this equipment as in your OSCE station. Okay, you've identified.
Yes,
What is the flow rate used?
Sir, 30 to 70 liter per minute.
Okay, it is going to be around 40 to 70 liters, right? 40 to 70 liters is the flow rate used in the high flow nasal oxygen cannula. What are the
Yes, sir.
indications for using high flow nasal oxygen, humidified nasal oxygen therapy?
Sir, in ICU, in non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema.
Okay, now even in cardiogenic pulmonary edema, you
acute
can use it.
respiratory.
Okay,
Both.
any
Yes, sir.
causes of type 1 respiratory failure. Okay,
Type 1. Yes, sir.
any type 1
Then-
respiratory failure, right? One by one. So type 1 respiratory failure in the sense
Okay.
any pneumonia, pulmonary edema, right? Any atelectasis of any causes. So you can use in any type 1 respiratory failure. Then,
Sir, in ICU, like during bronchoscopy in non-intubated patients.
okay, so when you want to increase the apneic oxygenation time,
Apnea.
right? So
Yes.
apneic oxygenation time, like when you're doing the bronchoscopy, right? Then when you're facing a patient with difficult intubation, okay? And difficult intubation, you want to increase the apneic oxygen time, you can use high flow nasal oxygen. Then any foreign body retrieval.
Yes.
Right. So these are the times where the patient is going to be apneic, but you can increase the apneic oxygenation time by using a high flow nasal oxygen therapy. Then any other indications?
The para-oxygenation.
What is para-oxygenation?
Sir, while doing some procedure like intubation, we have
That's
to
what we tell, no? Difficult
oxygen.
intubation.
Okay. So then pre-oxygenation in OT.
Okay, so in obese patients, okay, in obese patients or patient with poor complaints during pre-induction as well as post-extubation, you can use high flow nasal oxygen for oxygenation therapy. Okay, very important.
Yes.
Obese patient. Okay, when you are weaning the patients from ventilator, post-extubation, in your weaning phase, you can use high flow nasal
Yes.
oxygen. So these are some of the few indications for high flow nasal oxygen therapy. What are the physiological mechanisms it work?
Sir, it decreases the atelectasis and secretion while humidifying the air.
Okay, so first
My-
thing, it humidifies. Okay, it humidifies and warms. Okay, what is the temperature used for an high flow nasal oxygen? 31 to 37 degrees. Okay, this is the temperature of the gas before getting into the patient. Okay, so it humidifies as
Yes.
well as it warms. In that way, it loosens the secretions. It improves the ciliary activity. Good. Then
Yes. Sir, the production of the oxygen consumption is 250 ml per minute,
okay,
and the CO2 production is 200 ml per minute. But the
Okay.
elimination of CO2 is 8 to 20 ml per minute.
okay,
So it creates the negative subatmospheric pressure in the alveoli. So
Okay.
it helps to increase the oxygenation.
Very good. Okay, this is called as the bulk flow gradient. Okay, so what is bulk flow gradient? So if you are having a trachea here, okay, the bronchus, and this is the alveoli, right? And this is the pulmonary capillaries, right? Here, the oxygen, the patient is not having any breathing. Okay, the patient is apneic. Now the oxygen is coming at such a high rate. Okay, oxygen is removed at a rate of 250 ml per minute, which is a basal oxygen consumption. Whereas when there is no ventilation, carbon dioxide, which is getting accumulated because of the cellular metabolism, is buffered because carbon dioxide has got a huge buffer system in the body. Okay, it comes out only at a rate of 10 ml per hour. So what happens, the outgoing from the alveoli is 250 ml per minute, whereas the oxygen, carbon dioxide coming from the vessels into the alveoli is only 10 ml per minute. So naturally, what happens, the alveoli tend to shrink and collapse. So that creates a negative alveolar pressure. So from here in the mouth part, okay, because of using 40 to 70 liters per minute, it creates a high pressure in the mouth. Because of the different gradient of movement of oxygen and the carbon dioxide, it creates a negative pressure in the alveoli. So this gradient puts more and more oxygen, pushes more and more oxygen into the alveoli. So this gradient movement is called as the bulk flow. This is one of the
Yes.
most important mechanism of oxygenation in patients with high flow nasal oxygen therapy. Okay, so bulk flow movement is because of this pressure gradient created. So when you use a high flow nasal oxygen, this 40 to 70 liters creates a huge positive pressure in and around the nasopharynx. So when it creates a
3
huge
to
positive
7.
pressure in and around the nasopharynx, it creates a PEEP of 6 to 7. So this 6 to 7 PEEP helps to maintain the airway pressure continuously positive. That helps to open up the collapsed alveoli. So that is how it improves the oxygenation in atelectatic patients. So it increases the PEEP and it increases the end expiratory volume. In that way, it increases the FRC that helps to improve the oxygenation. So these are the ways. And then other thing is lastly, it reduces the dead space. So these are the different ways high flow nasal oxygen is working. Bulk flow gradient is the most important mechanism. Second other important mechanism is by producing a huge flow around the nasopharynx, it dilates the nasopharynx, it reduces resistance, so the gases can flow easily, one thing. Second thing, because of the high pressure and high flow, and it creates a PEEP or a continuous airway pressure of 6 to 7 centimeters of water. That continuous airway pressure keeps the alveoli stent open by creating a PEEP. So that PEEP opens up the alveoli. That opening up of alveoli improves the gas exchange and improves the FRC. Last mechanism is it reduces the dead space. These are the different ways the high flow nasal oxygen works and helps a patient in improving the oxygenation. Any questions here?
Sir, regarding first point, humidification and temperature thing.
Yeah. What's your doubt in that?
Sir, can it if the water levels are if you overfill the jar, does it cause circuit to contaminate this filling, sir, soiling?
I mean, actually, the circuit hasn't got any direct communication with circuit. Okay, say for example, if the water is heated, it just goes through the tube and it is heated externally to the water. Okay, the gases going inside the tube, so there is no chance of leaking into the tube. Okay, but the problem, when you overheat it, okay, there is a chance of accidental overwarming the gas. So that can produce burns into the patient's nasal mucosa. In order to avoid that, we have a temperature sensor which cuts down the temperature when it's beyond set limit is reached.
So what is the difference between Thrive?
Thrive and high flow nasal oxygen are more or less the same. Okay, transnasal humidified high flow nasal oxygen, they're more or less exactly the same one.
Okay, sir.
Sir, sorry, please, if you can just repeat bulk flow gradient once again, sir.
Okay.
One last time.
Right. So trachea here, the bronchus here, and the alveoli is here. These are the pulmonary capillaries. Right. So if the patient is apneic, the body needs 250 ml per minute for basal oxygen consumption, and the body produces 200 ml per minute of carbon dioxide. Okay. Oxygen comes out by the gradient, carbon dioxide goes out by the pressure gradient normally. Okay. So when the patient is apneic, when the patient is no ventilation, what happens, this carbon dioxide doesn't get exhaled out. When the carbon dioxide doesn't get exhaled out, it normally produces respiratory acidosis. But that is prevented by high amount of carbon dioxide buffer present inside the body. So because of the huge buffer inside the body, the carbon dioxide moves out at a rate of 10 ml per minute. Okay, whereas oxygen is getting continuously utilized, that gradient is kept constant. So what happens, the oxygen will come into the alveoli, from alveoli into the blood vessels at a rate of 250 ml per minute. Right. So when the movement is mismatched, okay, 250 ml is coming in, only 10 ml is going out. What happens to the size of the alveoli?
It's going to collapse.
It's going to collapse. Okay, it's going to have negative pressure. It's going to collapse and get shrinked. Okay. As I said, in high flow nasal oxygen, around the mouth and the nasopharynx, you are creating a continuous positive airway pressure and a PEEP of 6 to 7. So here there is a 6 to 7, here there is a negative pressure. What happens to the pressure gradient? It is going to get more. So this pressure gradient will drive more and more oxygen into the alveoli.
Yes, sir. Got it, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Excuse me, sir.
One more point. Sir, like the PEEP is generated only when the mouth is closed, right, sir?
Yeah, most important thing, mouth has to be closed. When the patient is opening the mouth, all the PEEP is lost.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Does it mean that carbon dioxide excretion is much less in when you are using this high
Yes,
flow
okay,
nasal?
but the problem, but the good thing, carbon dioxide has got a very good buffering system inside the body. So that is why they've noticed in a study that even you can increase apneic time even up to 45 minutes where there is no respiratory acidosis noted in the body.
Okay.
All the trials has been done. In few patients, even up to 65 minutes, there is no any respiratory acidosis. Because two reasons. One is carbon dioxide has got good buffer. Second thing, carbon dioxide diffusion or solubility is much higher. Okay, even a 10 ml per hour, there are all the alveolus which is taking part in the gas exchange can take up as much amount of carbon dioxide as possible because of its high diffusion capacity and high solubility.
Okay.
Shall we move on to the next one? Yes. Okay, who is going to be the volunteer with me? Anyone? Come fast. Okay, no worries.
Yes,
No worries.
sir, I can volunteer.
Right, no problem, right. So again, liquid oxygen tank has gained a lot of importance in the recent times. So last time they didn't ask, this time there is a chance that you can get a liquid oxygen tank. Okay, so let me explain how the liquid oxygen tank actually functions. Okay, so it has got a double wall steel tank. Okay, so it has got a double wall steel tank, and this double wall steel inside is a vacuum. Okay, and they're coated with a layer of perlite. Perlite is a layer or a substance which acts as an insulator so that it doesn't conduct heat, it doesn't get heat from the external atmosphere. So that is why this vacuum layer is coated with a layer of perlite. Okay, so purpose of perlite is to increase the insulation. First point. Second thing, it is a liquid oxygen filled, like the nitrous oxide cylinder. This is also filled with a liquid. What is the temperature of this liquid?
So minus 180, 180, minus 180.
Okay, it is minus
Minus 150
150 to minus
150.
170. Okay, why it is stored at this temperature?
So below its critical temperature.
So the critical temperature of oxygen is going to be minus 118. Okay, so as I said yesterday, only when you get a gas below its critical temperature, you can liquefy it. So that is why the liquid oxygen tank is having a temperature of minus 150 to minus 170 degrees Celsius. First point. Then how come this tank is maintaining this temperature at this level?
Outside coated with carbon steel.
Okay. It is a
Vacuum insulator.
okay, vacuum insulated evaporator. But how come the liquid is maintaining this temperature?
Heat developed is exchanged out via
Exchanger, sir.
Heat exchanger.
The vaporization method.
Okay,
Latent heat.
Okay, what is latent heat of vaporization? Very good. Okay, it is a latent heat of vaporization. What is the latent heat of vaporization?
When any liquid is vaporized, then temperature of that liquid decreases.
Okay, very good. No problem. At least you have touched that. Okay, so let's assume this is a container which is having a liquid which has got a vaporizing potential. Okay, so what happens? There are liquid molecules on the top and there are liquid molecules in the bottom, right? So the top layer will always have a constant potential to jump into vapor form. Okay, so in order to convert a liquid into vapor or gas, what you need energy. Unless you supply external heat, it can't convert to liquid or vapor form. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so this top layers automatically gets converted to vapor form, but where from the energy comes for the top layer?
So the kinetic and
Surface.
Yes. So when the top layer is getting vaporized from liquid to vapor form, as I said, it needs energy. This energy to convert the top layer from liquid to vapor is supplied by the bottom layer. So the liquid molecules which are lying in the bottom, okay, they supply the energy needed for the top layer to get vaporized from liquid to vapor form. So when they lose their energy, what happens to the temperature?
Drops.
It gets cools down. Okay, that's how this liquid oxygen is able to maintain its own temperature. Okay, so when you're using the vapors for hospital purpose, what happens? The top layer gets vaporized, the bottom layer gets cooled down. When you again use, the top layer gets vaporized, the bottom layer gets cooled down more. So this latent heat of vaporization itself keeps the liquid oxygen temperature at minus 150 minus 170 degrees Celsius. There is no any external cooling applied. All guys, unmute and tell me whether you've understood this point.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Excellent. So this phenomenon is called as the without external heat supply, the changing of one form of state to other form is called as the latent heat. Since it is a formation of liquid to vapor, we call them as latent heat of vaporization. Good. So first point we discussed, it is going to be 150 to minus 170. Okay, minus 150 to minus 170 degrees Celsius. Okay. Sorry. My alternate pen is again started stuck. Okay, so the temperature is maintained by the latent heat of vaporization. Steel tank, double layer, layer of perlite and liquid, right? And here are the oxygen vapors present. What is the partial pressure or the pressure recorded in the vapor chamber in the liquid oxygen tank? Okay, it is going to be 7 to 10 bars, okay, or 700 to 1000 kilopascal. Right? So this is the pressure recording, or normally the oxygen vaporizing chamber is kept at this pressure, right? Then there is a safety relief valve present here. So this will open when the pressure is extending beyond 17 bars or 1700 kilopascal. Able to follow so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is liquid oxygen. These are the vapors. The vapor pressure normally kept between 7 to 10 bars, and the safety relief valves open when the pressure is going to be extending beyond. So when you don't utilize the liquid oxygen for quite long duration, what happens? There will be vapors being formed and it's going to over pressurize. So at 17 bars, this safety relief valve will open so that the liquid oxygen tank is protected. Right. Now we are going to utilize the vapors for the hospital purpose. Then you've got the pressure regulator. So this will reduce the pressure from 700 to 800 kilopascal to intermediate pressure system, which is 400 kilopascal or 55 psi, and then it is go to the hospital pipeline. Okay, there is another one called control valve. Okay, when you are having an excessive demand, okay, when the demand for the oxygen is more, like in the current situation, what happens, directly the control valve opens, it gets away the liquid, and it is superheated by copper coils, and the heat for the superheat comes from the external atmosphere. So it is superheated by the copper coils, then it goes to the pressure regulator, then it goes to the pipeline. So this is the basic working principle of liquid oxygen tank.
So can you please explain the last one, the copper coil?
Sorry?
Control valve?
Yeah, so there is another control valve here. When there is an excessive demand for the hospital, okay, the vaporization rate might not be sufficient to match the demand. At that point, the control valve will open, it will get away the liquid, it is heated by the supercoil so that it gets vaporized fast, then it reaches the pressure regulator, then it goes to the pipeline.
Okay, so got it.
Right? So this is the working principle of liquid oxygen tank. So what is it can supply in hospital oxygen supplies for at least 7 to 10 days. 7 to 10 days of the hospital oxygen supply can be managed by liquid oxygen tank. It has normal capacity of 1500 liters. Right, depending upon the oxygen demand, you can manufacture of various size you want. So again, since it is a liquid, with the pressure gauge alone, you can't measure the what is oxygen content. So there are two ways. One is acetic nitrous oxide cylinder, which is lying on the weight balance. So by measuring the weight, you can find the what is the content inside. Second thing, to measure the content inside, there is a differential pressure transducer. One pressure transducer will be at the vapor state, connected to the vapor form. One pressure transducer will be connected to the liquid form. Depending upon the height in the each column, you can measure what is the content present there. So this technique is called as the differential pressure transducer. Good. Any questions? What are the complications of using liquid oxygen tank? Okay.
Sir, impurities in oxygen, sir?
Not much. Basically, it can produce cryogenic liquid damage for the people around. Okay, so it's a very cold solution. When they accidentally get into the liquid into touch, they're going to produce horrible burns. Okay, so cryogenic liquid damage is one of the main concern of using liquid oxygen tank. Cold burns, basically. Right. Any questions here? And next thing, since oxygen is a gas which can support combustion, it's a fire hazard. Good. Shall we move on to the next one?
So really sorry. Sir, can you just repeat the pressure regulator pressure once again, please?
Pressure regulator, nothing but like you do what pressure regulator we got in the manifold room. So it comes at 700 to 1000 kilopascal is the pressure chamber. It goes to the pressure regulator. It is reduced to 400 or 55 psi.
Okay.
Good. Moving on to the next station. Who want to try with this one? Okay.
Myself, sir.
Right. Coming to the question. What is the recommended length of the epidural catheter to be placed inside the epidural space?
Whatever at the give way plus 5 centimeters.
Only the volunteer, please rest all mute. The person who volunteered. What is the recommended length of the catheter to be placed inside the epidural space? Oh, where is the person?
So 5 centimeters, sir.
Okay, it is going to be 3 to 5 centimeters is the recommended length you have to keep inside. So what happens when you keep excessive length inside?
Coiling, sir.
One, it can get coiled. Second thing, it can go to one foramen and can produce a selective nerve block rather than producing an epidural analgesia. Okay, good. It can become unilateral. What happens when you keep less than 3 centimeters?
The force will be outside, sir.
Okay, so it can get dislodged very easily by the patient's movement, right? So what is the size of the filtering capacity of the epidural filters?
Don't know.
0.22 micrometers. Okay, that is the filtering capacity of the epidural catheter filter. Okay, this filter.
Okay.
You see here? Okay, the filter is not here. So you would have seen in the epidural catheters, it comes with filters now. The filter has got a capacity, the filtering capacity is going to be 0.22 micrometers mesh. Right. What is the name of the tip of the epidural needle and what is the angulation?
Toohey
is a needle name. I'm asking the tip name.
Huber punch.
Huber's tip. Okay, it is going to be Huber's tip. And what is the angulation? 20 degrees. 20 degrees. Okay. Why it is angulated at 20 degrees? Yes, to prevent the dural puncture. Okay, it is blunt and it is angulated to prevent it. If it is sharp tip, it can puncture the dura. So in order to prevent the dural rupture or dural puncture, we have this 20 degrees angulation. What are the complications of epidural insertion?
Accidental intrathecal.
Where is my volunteer? Come on, Brady. Just open up. Come. What are the complications of epidural insertion?
Infection.
Okay, infection. Then
Hematoma.
Dural puncture.
Dural puncture. There is, think of common things you face inside the OT.
Catheter broken.
Okay, sharing of the catheter. Intravascular, intrathecal. Right, so many complications. The list keeps on getting added up. Okay, one interesting question. Epidural abscess, epidural hematoma, which is more dangerous?
So hematoma?
Abscess.
Abscess is more dangerous.
Okay.
Hematoma.
Few hematoma, few abscess. Hematoma is more dangerous, okay? Hematoma has got a very acute course. Abscess has got a very chronic course, okay? It takes 7 days for the abscess to produce a complete dural compression and produce weakness. Whereas hematoma, within 48 hours, you get a complete loss of dural tissues. So hematoma is always very dangerous. It has to be addressed very fast than the abscess. Good. So what are the dermatomes to be covered in labor analgesia?
T10L.
In stage 1.
Stage 1, T10L1.
T10 to
L1.
L1. Okay, T10 to L1 or L2, right? T10 to L1. Then in second stage,
S2, S3.
okay, mainly the pudendal nerves, okay? S2, S3, and S4 because it is compressing the perineal tissue, the head as it descends down. So you have to give the pudendal nerve, basically S2, S3, and S4. Good. So any questions in this station?
No, sir.
Good. Let's move on to the next one.
So the volume of volume of epidural catheter and the filter.
Volume required for the catheter and the filter. I think you mean the dead space volume in the filter and the catheter.
Yes, sir. Yes.
I read somewhere, but I forgot the exact number. I'll tell you later then.
Okay.
I read it, I forgot, but I'll come and let you know.
Okay.
Sir, volume
Sir,
required for the thoracic as well as lower, sir. How much ml is required for each segment in the lower thoracic?
There are so many factors which will decide upon, okay, the patient's height. Okay, there are so many factors. On an average, you need 1.5 to 2 ml per segment to be blocked. If you need to block 5 segments, you need at least 10 ml minimum.
Can we apply Armitage formula here, sir?
Okay, Armitage formula is predominantly only for the caudal block. It doesn't apply for adults because adults, the epidural space is not as continuous as in pediatric patient, because there'll be large, more fatty tissues. Even if you calculate the Armitage formula, it doesn't give you the exact dermatome what you need.
Okay.
So how do we assess at what point are we supposed to keep the catheter? Like how much depth insertion and volume spaces to be covered depending on the surgery. And so volume.
Right. So first, for that, you need to know the anatomical knowledge. Okay, the neural supply, both the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and the motor and sensory supply. Okay, that's the first thing. For example, if you're operating on the kidneys, right, for the renal surgeries, what is the highest dermatome you need to cover?
T10.
It is go to T6. Okay, it gets supply from T6 to T12. Okay, so that knowledge is very important when you're activating an epidural, right? So when you need a T6, you have to put the epidural at least at T8, T9 level, at the lowermost part. Okay, if you get below T10, T11, you can't reach the T6 level. There is a possible chance that your epidural, the use of epidural purpose might not be actually been exhibited in the clinical grounds. Okay, so the anatomical knowledge and the neural supply of the particular tissue has to be very important in choosing the right space, in choosing the right length, and choosing the right volume.
Okay.
Sir, so if we put epidural catheter at a T10 level, so 4 segment above will be blocked.
Okay, so right. For example, if you're keeping a T10, if you're inserting a T10, T11, and you're inserting 5 centimeter insert, the tip will be hardly between T8 and T9, right? Okay, now when you give local anesthetic, it can cover 2 segments proximally the motor, another 2 segments proximally for sensory, another 2 segments proximally for sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so if you put a T8 and T9, up to T4 you can have the sympathetic coverage. Up to T6 you can have between T5 and T6 you can have sensory supply, whereas a motor supply will not cross beyond T6. Got the point?
Yes, sir.
So this is the differential blockade. Good. Shall we move on to the next one? Yes. Last time they put one station on the ventilator waveform, right? Ventilator waveform analysis.
Yes, the PCV.
Okay, so what mode of ventilation is this? Anyone have an idea about ventilator scalars and loops?
Pressure control.
Okay, this is a volume control ventilation. Okay, right. So before discussing this question, we'll move on to the scalar form discussion. Okay, right. So in ventilator waveform analysis, there are basically 2 things. Okay, one is scalar, another is loop. Okay, so in ventilators, there are 3 variables: pressure, volume, and flow. When you're comparing variable with one constant, mainly the time, they are called as scalars. When you're comparing 2 variables like pressure and volume, or the flow and volume, it is called as the loops. Understood the basics?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when you compare 2 variables, it comes under loops. When you compare the variables against a constant time, it is going to be scalar. Right, so these scalars and loops are going to get operated in the ventilator waveform analysis. So before understanding the waveforms, you need to understand the basics about what is volume control and what is pressure control, and what is meant by trigger, cycling, and limit. Right. So when you set in a volume control and in the pressure control, 3 important factors are important. One is trigger, then is limit, then is cycling, then is the baseline. Okay, what is mean by trigger? Okay, leave about ventilators. Now you are breathing at a rate of 12 to 16 per minute. What is initiating your breath?
Negative interruption.
What is the prime factor in the body which is asking you to, okay, now it's time to breathe, you start breathing?
Carbon dioxide level.
Carbon dioxide level or anything else? What is it, to be more incomplete? Carbon dioxide level stimulating what?
Chemoreceptor.
Respiratory center.
Okay, so it is the carbon dioxide level stimulating the brainstem or the respiratory center. Okay, so when you stop breathing voluntarily, what happens? The carbon dioxide goes up. At one point, it is going to go and stimulate the brainstem respiratory center. Okay, it's going to tell you now you can't hold more than some beyond this time. Start breathing. Okay, that initiating point is called as the trigger. Okay. Unmute and tell me we understood what trigger is.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, each and every line, each and every point, understand very clearly. Then you
Sir,
understand.
again, if you can just repeat, sir, just didn't follow.
Right. So the trigger is the one which is asking you to initiate your breath, as in a simple terms. In a quiet respiration, when you're in a normal spontaneous respiration, it is a carbon dioxide which is going and telling the information to the brainstem that, okay, there I'm huge amount now. You start acting, then you start your inspiration. Okay, that is a trigger point. But in ventilators, you are completely paralyzed, you're completely sedated. The brainstem is not going to respond. So what is the trigger in the ventilator? How will the ventilator know that, okay, this is the time I have to start breathing for the patient?
Sir, I ratio we set up.
No?
Time.
It is a time. Very good. Okay, it is a time. Right. If you set a rate of 12 per minute, right? So which means every 5 seconds, the ventilator has to breathe. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So the ventilator is going quiet. Okay. 5 seconds is up. Okay. They've set at 12 per minute. 5 seconds is over. I'll start breathing. Then again, 5 seconds is over. Then again, I'll start triggering. So this time is the trigger for ventilator in volume control breathing. Unmute and tell me, understood this second point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there is one more trigger. Either it could be time triggered or it could be the patient who is initiating the ventilator. So if the patient is having some attempt, machine will recognize and will start ventilating. So there are two triggers. One is the time triggered. If the patient is breathing, it could be patient triggered. Okay, clear?
Yes, sir.
Similarly, for the pressure control, it is going to be the same. Time triggered or the patient triggered. So you understand what trigger is. Okay. Next thing is limit. Limit will come to later. Let's move on to cycling. Now you have inspired. Now come to leave about the ventilator, come to a normal respiration. You have inspired, the carbon dioxide has triggered the brainstem and you have inspired. What is making you to expire?
Intrathoracic pressure, sir.
Inhibition from the centers.
Okay, the inhibition from the centers. Okay, how it is inhibited?
Bronchial stretch receptor.
Excellent. Okay, it is a stretch receptors. Okay, there are stretch receptors located in the alveolar wall in the bronchus. These stretch receptors or the J receptors will send the stimulus to brainstem. Okay, you have worked enough. Stop. Once it stopped, the signals lung will shrink back. So this process of inspiration to change in expiration is called as the cycling. Okay. Understood?
Yes.
Okay. Now in volume, now come to the ventilator. In volume control ventilation, what is the factor which is going to cycle from inspiration to expiration?
Volume.
Tidal volume.
It is a tidal volume. Very good. Okay. You set a tidal volume. And then once that particular tidal volume is reached, the ventilator will tell, okay, I've reached a set tidal volume. Now I'll change to expiration. So this is called as the cycling. What is the cycling in pressure control ventilation?
Pressure.
Pressure.
No.
Airway pressure.
No.
Time.
It's the time. Okay. It is the inspiratory time.
Flow.
Okay. It is the inspiratory time, which is a major factor for cycling from inspiration to expiration. Right? What is baseline?
खोलिए.
What is baseline? Baseline is nothing but the PEEP you set. If you don't set PEEP, the baseline airway pressure will be 0. If you set a PEEP, the baseline airway pressure will be the PEEP amount of you set it. Okay. Right. So in volume control, there is a limit. Okay. The ventilator cannot act on its own. So you have to set a limit that beyond which whatever it is, you should not overfunction it. That limit is flow in volume control ventilation. When I explain the graphs, you'll understand more about the limit. Don't worry. In pressure control ventilation, the limit is going to be the pressure. Okay. Now let's assume this one, keep it aside. We'll assess the scalar waveforms of different variables with time in volume control ventilation. Okay, what are the things you set in the volume control ventilation? Respiratory rate, right?
Tidal volume.
Then you set
Tidal volume.
tidal volume 500 ml per minute. Then you set a flow of 60 liters per minute. And you're gonna set PEEP around 5 centimeters of water, then FaO2, 40%. Okay, this is a standard setting you keep, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So now you're going to waveform in the ventilator. First, we'll
Will
discuss-
IE ratio influence this?
I'll come to that point later, right? So this is pressure, this is time. This is flow, this is time. Volume and time, 3 scalars, okay? So now when you set a PEEP of around 5, what happens, it will start from here. This is 5. The ventilator will start from working from here. When you set a PEEP of 0, it will start from the baseline. Do you understand the first point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now let's assume that you set a PEEP of 5. So the ventilator is going to start working from here. So this point is going to be the PEEP. Right. Okay. Now what is the trigger? It is going to be the time. You set 12 breaths per minute, which means every 5 seconds, the ventilator has to blow air into the body. Okay. Now the flow is 0. There is no flow and the volume is 0 inside the lung. Ventilator will assume that the air inside the lung is going to be 0 because it doesn't calculate the FRC and leave out those things. So initial 5 seconds, PEEP is 5, flow is 0, volume is going to be 0. Now 5 seconds have reached. So what happens once reach the trigger point? Okay, once reach the trigger, the ventilator will rapidly increase the flow to the set flow, which is 60 liters. Understand this point?
Sir, how we decide flow?
We can set, okay? You can set up to 90 liters in the ventilator. Okay. So you have set 60 liters. Once the 5 seconds is reached, once the trigger point is reached, the ventilator will start blowing air at a rate of 60 liters per minute. So this is the flow, and the flow will reach very, very rapidly. Okay. And it will reach the maximum set limit. Right. So after reaching 60 liters, since this is the limit, okay, you have set a limit of flow of 60 liters per minute, it will maintain a constant level at 60. So this is called as the limit. This is trigger. Unmute and tell me we're able to follow with me so far.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes. So 5 seconds is reached. So ventilator is triggered. Once it is triggered in volume control ventilation, it is going to rapidly increase the flow to 60 liters and it will limit at 60 liters and maintain that flow continuously 60 liters per minute. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now it has blown 60 liters into the patient's lung. What happens to the pressure?
Raise.
It will go up. It will go up. Right. So during this continuous airflow, the pressure will rise in the ventilator. It will go up. So what is this point? This is called as the peak inspiratory pressure. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Guys, if you don't understand any point, let me know. Understanding of this one is important to interpret the waveform.
Sir, please repeat it once, sir, please.
Okay, so the trigger point of 5 seconds is reached. The ventilator is blowing at a rate of 60 liters per minute, which is the flow you set. It will reach very rapidly and then sustain that flow at 60 liters per minute because that is the limit you set. So the 60 liters per minute will be sustained. So as the flow is increasing, what happens, the pressure, the the air is going into the lung, so the pressure is increasing. Okay. Now, when the lung has got two components, one is the airways, which are trachea, bronchi, and the bronchioles. Second thing is the alveoli. So the lung has to overcome two forces. One is the resistance offered by the airways. Second thing is going to be the compliance offered by the alveoli. Is that clear? So the lung has to overcome the airway resistance and the resistance offered by the alveoli to blow the air into the lungs. Okay. So this peak inspiratory pressure, this waveform is nothing but the pressure needed to overcome the airway resistance. Okay. So in order to overcome the airway resistance, you need a peak inspiratory pressure. Say for example, if there is a bronchial obstruction or any obstructive lung disease, what happens to the peak inspiratory pressure?
Increase.
It will increase, okay? Because now lung has to produce a huge pressure to overcome the airway resistance offered by the conducting airways. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that is peak inspiratory pressure. Next, after reaching the peak inspiratory pressure, now the lung has to overcome the resistance offered by the alveoli. Now it has to open up this balloon. Okay, that pressure to open up the balloon is called as the plateau pressure.
Plateau pressure.
So peak inspiratory pressure is affected by the airways. Plateau pressure is affected by the alveoli. Unmute and tell me whether you're able to understand this point clearly.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. So when there is a peak inspiratory pressure increase, which means there is something obstructing the airway. Airway resistance is very high. When the plateau pressure is very high, which means the alveolar compliance is very, very low. For example, ARDS, pleural effusion, atelectasis, pneumothorax, all these conditions, all the trachea, bronchi, everything is fine. What is the main problem? The alveoli is synced and collapsed. So you need a larger pressure to open. In those conditions, plateau pressure will be very high. Unmute and tell me you understand this point clearly.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, as the flow is increasing and it is sustained at 60 liters per minute, the airway pressure has come up to peak inspiratory pressure. It has opened the airways. It has opened the alveoli and reaches the plateau pressure. Okay.
So what is the normal difference between the peak inspiratory pressure and the plateau pressure?
So the set limit will be the peak inspiratory
5.
pressure should be always kept less than 40. The plateau pressure should be always kept less than 30. Okay. So the normal peak inspiratory plateau pressure difference is between around 5 millimeters
5
of
to
mercury.
10.
Okay, 5 to 10. It's a
Correct.
normal pressure difference. Right. So flow is increasing to 60 liters, then it is sustained because it is limited. Then as the flow is increasing, the pressure inside the airways increases to overcome the airways, then the plateau pressure to overcome the alveoli. So as the pressure and the flow are increasing, what happened to tidal volume? It will come and reach the 500 point. Yes or no?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Now 500 ml has reached, which means it has reached its cycling time. Yeah?
Yes, sir.
So when the cycling time is reached, the cycle is decided by the tidal volume is set. So when the cycling time is reached, the flow will reduce down. The airway pressure will drop to the baseline of people. Volume will come down and the expiration gets completed. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Everybody clear how the volume control ventilation scalars work?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Peak inspiratory pressure to overcome the resistance offered by the airways. Plateau pressure is the airway pressure generated to open up the alveoli. Then there is a flow limited, which keeps the limit at 60 liters per minute. Once the tidal volume of 500 ml is reached, the cycling starts and the expiration begins. Good. So remember this waveform. When you see a pressure time or a flow time or a volume time in this type of pattern, it is more likely to be a volume controlled ventilation. Good. Once you understand this one, we can move on to pressure control ventilation.
Yes, sir.
Good. Let's move on to pressure control.
Sir, if the difference between peak inspiratory pressure and plateau pressure, the difference increases, what does it mean, sir?
Okay, I'll come to the point later, right? That chart I've kept here, okay? Don't worry.
Okay, sir.
Now we are moving on to pressure control ventilation. What is the trigger? It is going to be the same, the time and the patient's, or time triggered or patient trigger. Here the limit in patient control ventilation is the inspiratory pressure you keep. Okay, and the cycling is based upon the inspiratory time. Baseline is going to be the PEEP, which is going to be the same both in volume control as well as in the pressure control. Now let's see what happens in the scalar waveform. Okay, so now the baseline is going to be 5, flow is 0, volume is 0. Right. So as the time triggers, 12 breaths per minute is a thing you keep, you set. Inspiratory pressure, normally you keep around 20 centimeters of water. Inspiratory time, you generally set at 1.5 seconds. PEEP is going to be 5. Okay. Now, when the time trigger is reached, okay, at 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, the trigger is going to be the time. Now, the pressure will rapidly increase from the set 5 to 20, which is the inspiratory pressure you set. Is that clear?
Sir,
Yes,
repeat.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is it clear? Now it is a pressure control. You have set a pressure of 20 centimeters of water. Now it is increasing to 20 centimeters of water rapidly. Okay. Now okay, so this is a tube which is connected to the ventilator. The ventilator pressure is 20, right?
Yes, sir.
And the lung pressure, since you kept a PEEP, it is going to be 5. Right. So this pressure gradient of 20 to 5. So from high pressure, the gases will flow inside, right?
Yes, sir.
So the flow is going to take a rapid upstroke. Is that clear so far?
Yes, sir.
Good. As the gases are flowing inside, the volume will rise into the lung. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's go to the limit. So the limit is going to be the pressure. So after reaching 20 centimeters of water, it will be sustained.
Sustained.
Sustained, 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 sustained. So what is that limit here? Inspiratory time. So until for 1.5 seconds, 1.5 seconds, the pressure of 20 will be continuously sustained. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when there is a sustained pressure, what happens to the pressure in the lung now? 20, right?
Yes, sir.
The pressure of 20 as it is blowing air. Now the pressure is sustained. The alveolar pressure and the ventilator pressure will be equal now. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now the pressure is equal. So when there is pressure equal in both in the ventilator and the alveoli, what happens to the flow? There won't be any flow at all, right?
No.
So the flow will be decelerating. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Good. Understood
Yes, sir.
clearly?
Yes, sir.
The
Yes.
flow will be decelerating. Pressure is sustained until 1.5 seconds. So the volume inside the lung will be, depending upon the
Remain
complaints, it will be
constant.
sustained. It will be sustained. Okay. Now 1.5 seconds is over. So that is going to be the cycling. Now it is going to go for expiration. Yeah.
Yes.
1.5 seconds is over. It will go for expiration. 1 second is over. It will go for expiration. So this is the scalar loop in pressure control ventilation. The most clinching point between the volume control and the pressure control is decelerating flow. When you find a decelerating flow, it is 100% pressure control ventilation. In volume control, the flow is limited, it is sustained. You don't get a decelerating flow at all.
So please repeat.
You want me to repeat again, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now The PEEP is set at 5, so it is going at 5, 0 flows, 0 tidal volume. So once the 5 second, the trigger point has reached, since yes, it is a pressure controlled ventilation, you have set a pressure of inspiratory pressure of 20, there will be sudden jump in the airway pressure because it's going to blow air now. So from ventilator it is 20, the airway pressure is going to be 5 initially because of the PEEP. So this 15 centimeters of pressure gradient is going to make the gas to flow into the lung. So the pressure will rapidly rise to 20 and it is sustained there because it is limited. So beyond 20 it can't reach, it will rapidly reach and it is sustained. So during that time there will be a rapid flow. Volume increases rapidly. Right, so at this point. Now what happens, after all the gases are flowing in, the airway pressure keeps on increasing. It will reach a point of the ventilator pressure. So both the ventilator pressure and the airway pressure will be equal. So there will be no gas flow at all. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So at this point, the ventilator will be sustained at 20 centimeters of water. Since the airway pressure, the ventilator pressure and the lung pressure are matched, there is no flow. So the flow will be decelerating to 0. Okay. Since there is no gas flow coming in, the tidal volume will be sustained at the same point. Right.
Yes, sir.
After 1.5 seconds, which is the cycling time, which is the set time is set. After 1.5 seconds, what happens, the machine will change to expiration, which is the cycling. So after 1.5 seconds, it will go for expiration. Then the tidal volume drops to baseline. Simple. A decelerating flow is most unique feature of pressure control ventilation. Good. Now troubleshooting. When there is an air trapping, okay, when there is an air trapping or like in obstructive lung disease, what happens, there is going to be air trapping or dynamic hyperinflation. If we see the flow time curve in volume control ventilation, so this is a flow time curve in volume control, right? It is like this. So when there is an air trapping, the flow, inspiratory flow is not affected. The expiration will not touch the baseline because there is trapping. So it will not touch the baseline. So this amount of this thing is the auto PEEP. Okay, so this is air trapping. Good. Scalars, you understood clearly in both the type of modes of ventilation?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. So this understanding is so important because only with this understanding you can interpret the abnormal waveforms. Good. Now let's move on to loops. Basically, loops is one when you're comparing two variables. Right. So pressure here, volume here. 0, 5, 10, 15. Right. In volume control ventilation, you set tidal volume of 500, respiratory rate of 12 per minute, PEEP of 5, flow of 60 liters per minute. Right. So if you keep PEEP 0, the wave loop will start at 0 point. If you keep a PEEP of 5, the loop will start here. If you keep a PEEP of 10, the loop will start here. Right. When the patient is inspiring or in a positive pressure, to overcome the airway resistance and the alveolar resistance offered, the loop will be like this in inspiration. Then once the maximum inspiratory point is reached, which is the tidal volume of 500 ml, then the expiration drops like this. Okay, so this is a normal pressure volume loop in volume control ventilation. If the inspiratory flow is not sufficient, so instead of 60 liters, if we keep only 30 liters, what happens, there will be a cusping of inspiratory limb in the pressure volume loop. So this indicates when you see a cusping here, which means there is very low inspiratory flow. Second loop.
When will we see cusping?
Sorry, when there is a low inspiratory flow, instead of 60 liters, if we keep only 30 liters, which will be very low, less than the patient's peak inspiratory flow, so that causes cusping. Then when you over distend the lung, okay, when you over distend the lung, This is called as the beaking, like a bird beak appearance. Beaking happens when there is over distension. Lastly, when there is an air leak or auto peep. It will not touch. This loop is not completely closed. So this is amount of auto peep or air leak. Okay, clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when there is, let's coming on to the normal loop, tidal volume, pressure, inspiratory, expiratory. Okay. Let's assume when there is an airway obstruction, okay, in an obstructive lung disease, or when the compliance is going to be very poor. What happens, the lung has to take a larger time to complete the inspiration because it has to overcome the airway resistance. It has to overcome the alveolar resistance. So what happens when there is an overtime? There will be bowing of, it will get shifted rightwards. So this indicates the patient is having very low compliance. When the patient is having high compliance, like in emphysematous patient, it will be shifted leftwards. So this indicates high compliance. This indicates low compliance. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with this thing in the background, we will go and interpret the station, which is here. Okay. So what is this mode of ventilation? This is a pressure time scalar. Where do you get this type of waveform? In which mode of ventilation?
Volume control.
Volume control.
Very good. Volume control ventilation. This is a pressure time loop scalar of volume control ventilation. What does the point A denotes?
Peak inspiratory pressure.
Peak inspiratory pressure.
Peak inspiratory pressure.
Peak inspiratory pressure. What does the point B denotes?
Plateau pressure.
Plateau pressure.
Okay. What is this point? That is going to be the baseline.
Peak.
Here the peep is
Zero.
Zero.
Excellent. Very good. Now in this curve, what is the important thing you notice?
Increased peak inspiratory
Peak
pressure.
inspiratory pressure is increased.
Airway obstruction होगा.
Plateau pressure is normal.
Same.
Okay, there is widening of peak inspiratory and plateau pressure. In which conditions you get C?
Tracheal stenosis.
Okay, when there is any high airway resistance condition. Any airway obstruction, high resistance. Bronchoconstriction, tracheal stenosis, foreign body, so many airway resistance. Tube kinking, very good, tube kinking. What is the problem here?
Increased plateau.
Okay, peak inspiratory pressure is also increased.
And
the plateau pressure
Plateau
is
is
also
also
increased,
increased.
whereas the difference is kept normal.
Normal.
Okay,
Yes,
the
sir.
difference is kept normal. Here the difference normal, difference is normal. So the predominant increase is the plateau pressure. Which conditions you get D?
Restricted.
Laparoscopic surgery.
ARDS. ARDS. Any condition which is going to reduce the complaints of the lung. Restricted lung disease, like
Restricted disease.
ARDS, restricted lung disease, pneumothorax. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Atelectasis of any cause. Good. Excellent. Able to interpret easily now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. Here you got
Sir, please explain C1 again.
C. Okay. Here there is increase in the peak inspiratory pressure. The plateau pressure is normal. Okay. So, but there is a widening of peak inspiratory pressure and the plateau pressure. So, when the peak inspiratory pressure alone is increasing, that indicates the lung is facing to overcome the resistance offered by the tracts, airway tracts. So, there is a high resistance in the airways. Example for high resistance in the airways, bronchospasm, tube kinking, or any obstructive lung diseases, so and so. Right. So in order to check what is the amount of auto peak, what happens, at the end of expiration, you have to hold the patient. Okay. At the end, don't give the next inspiration. At the end of expiration, you have to hold it so that there won't be baseline touch. There'll be increase from the baseline. This is the amount of air trapping. This is the peep you set. So this is auto peep. This is the set peep. Yeah, you understand?
Yes, sir.
Auto peep and the set peep. So this is how you calculate the auto peep. So F is auto peep, A is the set amount of peep. Understood the scalars and loops clearly?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So with this, we are ending today's session. I've completed the most important equipments. Apart from the things which I discussed, there are possible chance that you could get defibrillators. So go and read and prepare OSCE for this one, defibrillators. Then vaporizers can be kept in one of these stations. You can have BIS monitors, okay, or Entopy or BIS monitors. Then what are the equipments could be kept for you?
TEG.
Sorry?
Sir, TEG graph.
Okay, TEG graph.
Sir, TEE, transesophageal echo, basic things.
Not necessary, mate. Don't worry. Ultrasound, okay? Read about ultrasound. TEG and all, they'll definitely not ask you, 100%. Don't worry. Even transthoracic echo, they don't ask you.
Sir, CT and MRIs, they have started, sir.
CT and MRI, they started. I've included that in the OSCE station. Don't worry.
Yeah, basically, sir, CORAD scoring and all we expect, sir.
Okay, so I mean, I'm not into COVID for quite long, right? So I'll try to get one station for COVID, but I don't know whether time permits. Okay, don't worry. But other CTs will discuss. So TEG
Can
is.
we get previous class videos, sir, please?
It's already there in my group. Okay.
So which group, sir?
Which
I
group,
only
sir?
I just got link, sir.
Okay, I'll share you the link. No problem. So
Okay.
so what are the defibrillators you can get? You can get a station on vaporizers. You can get a station
sir.
on BIS monitors. You can get station on TEG. Okay, these are the additional things you go and refer and have a preparation for it. Or you can get a station on yoke assembly.
Yoke assembly. Okay.
Possible. Then.
So recent ALS BLS guidelines.
Sorry.
Recent ALS BLS guidelines, sir.
I mean, I'll try to incorporate in few OSCE stations about this doses.
Sir, basic research regarding randomized control trials, usually they have one question, sir. If you can.
Statistics, no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Statistics.
Okay, fine. I'll try.
Basic outline, sir. Basic outline of all studies.
Okay, fine. I'll try to incorporate one station for that. I'm trying to put statistics in one station, but there are a lot to discuss, so I'm just keeping it out.
And sir, communication skills, they are more interested into like.
Anyway, I'm not interested in that. Don't worry.
Sir, bypass machine. Sir, bypass machine, some photograph or something.
Sorry?
Sir, bypass machine, ECMO
Cardiopulmonary
and
bypass.
machine.
I've included cardiopulmonary bypass, but since it was asked last time, I thought
Yes,
that
sir.
it might not ask this time, so that's why I just removed that station. Okay. In addition, just go and learn about ECMO.
ECMO, yes, sir.
ECMO. Okay. So
Yes.
ECMO and cardiopulmonary bypass more or less too. Okay. Possibly I'll talk a few lines about ECMO in one station. Don't worry.
Okay.
Sir, kindly share the link. That
Sir,
study group.
Okay,
Sir, I have a doubt in
I put my WhatsApp number in the group in the chat. You can send a WhatsApp link. I'll share you the link with that.
Sir, WhatsApp
Sir,
number.
what is the difference?
I've just put it in the chat.
Okay.
Sir, what about the
What
pacemaker?
is the
Pacemaker, I've included in the OSCE station. Don't worry. We got 35 clinical station to discuss.
Okay, sir.
Sir, your number is not showing in chat.
Sir, what is the
sir.
difference?
Okay,
between
fine.
card?
This is my number 960074.
Sir,
Kindly send me a
Sir,
WhatsApp.
ये बता दो. Sir, kindly tell the number once.
Yeah, I've just put it in the screen.
Screen.
अच्छा.
So, well, arterial cannulation, sir.
Okay.
If we puncture or damage the vessel, sir.
Okay.
What is the next? I mean, whether we have to withdraw the needle and stop.
Basically, you have to puncture to cannulate, isn't it? It itself is a damage.
Yes, sir.
Can you put your question in a much better way? I don't understand exactly.
I mean, they was like if you while doing the procedure, if you injure the vessel, what you will do?
Artery or
Simple thing.
vein?
Okay, compress. Okay, compress it.
Artery.
Compress it for at least 5 minutes.
Okay, sir.
Compress it for 5 minutes. It will stop.
Sir, when will be the next
Sir,
step?
what is?
Can we have a regional discussion tomorrow evening?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Head to toe blocks from head to toe, all the
Yes,
blocks
sir.
in one single
Yes,
day.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Sir,
sir.
can we
Yes,
get
sir, yes,
USG
sir.
guided, so
But
USG
yeah.
guided pictures also, USG guided photos
I
and
have
something?
added all the pictures of ultrasound guided images of all the blocks. Don't worry.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir.
Sir,
Thank you,
1
sir.
minute, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, for doing ABG, we will take syringe. Now, how much apparent should we take
Okay.
to rinse the syringe?
Just 0.1 ml and
Per ml.
dilute. 0.1 ml. That is fine.
Sir, 0.1 ml per ml, no?
Yeah, yeah. 0.1 ml. Just 0.1 ml and just flush the syringe. That's it.
Okay.
Sir, what is the
Thank you,
difference
sir.
between the pressure control and pressure support?
Pressure support is nothing but that patient is the one who is going to initiate the breath. If the patient is not initiating the breath, the ventilator will not perform. Okay. When the patient is initiating the breath, then it becomes like a pressure control ventilation. It maintains a continuous airway pressure depending upon the pressure you set.
So squared wave test.
Square wave test. Okay, someone has reminded me. I have a video in that. I'll put that in the group. Don't worry. Maybe in the next class, when I come to the tomorrow regional class, first thing I'll put is the square wave test. I don't know where I've kept that video. Okay, I'll put that video to display so that you'll have a better understanding.
Sir, tentative timing for tomorrow's class, sir?
Maybe, I don't know, you all guys are busy because next 4 days is a leave for me. So whenever earlier time you are free, we can start.
Tomorrow morning.
Morning time.
How about others? Are they get relieved?
No,
from
sir,
the-
not
Yes, sir.
morning, sir, please.
Sir, we have duties tomorrow, Monday
Okay.
working.
So there's so many people are not relieved, so we'll have in the evening.
So, evening 7.
Evening, okay. Evening as usual, 7 o'clock. Okay.
Okay,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you
Thank you,
guys.
sir.
See you tomorrow evening. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.